young Americans are barely keeping their head above water, with just 1 in 6 saying they are financially secure, in case you wonder why they're ready to burn it all down. So says a new poll from the Harvard Kennedy School, which finds that most young people think they will never achieve financial stability. As you'd expect, it's worse for those without a college degree, but even with a degree, almost a third are living paycheck to paycheck. Of course, partly because they're carrying student loans for a degree that, according to a recent study, costs $300,000 on average for a BA. Disturbingly, the poll found it's getting worse as they get older, with those in their late 20s in even worse shape than early 20s. It's not just financial. The poll finds that just 1 in 6 young people report having deep social connections or feeling deeply connected to their community. Now, I mentioned in recent videos how young Americans are the loneliest generation, which is driving depression, obesity, and addiction. This apparently got a lot worse during the COVID lockdowns, with socially isolated young people reporting higher rates of depression, especially those who were in high school or college during the pandemic. According to the Harvard poll, a majority of young people who were socially isolated during the pandemic reported symptoms of depression. This all is influencing their life choices. So young people are not having sex, they're not even dating. Almost half think they will never find a long-term romantic partner, never mind a spouse. The poll found under half of young Americans expect to have kids. Even fewer actually do have kids. In 1990, 60% of Americans in their 30s had kids. Today, it's just 27%. Now, in recent videos, I mentioned how the percent of young Americans living with their parents is now at 1940s levels. So at age 25, just 1 in 7 boomers lived at home. Now, it's 27% for millennials and 30% for Gen Z. Worse, in 1970, most young adults living at home could afford to move out. Today, it's just 18% who can afford to move out. The other 82% are stuck. In other words, in 1940, they lived at home because they were saving themselves for a good husband. Today, they live at home because rent-infested one-bedrooms cost 60 hours a week packing groceries. What's driving all this, of course, is 50 years of stagnant wages. Since the year 2000 alone, median real incomes for young adults have dropped by 10%, while inflation soared. One study last year from Raj Chetty at Stanford found that for the first time in American history, kids are not doing better than their parents. So for Americans born in 1940, 90% out-earned their parents at their age. By Gen X, that was down to 60%, thank Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter. For millennials, it is now a, quote, coin flip, with half earning less than their parents. In other words, 40 years of stagnation. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. Trump's policies are trying to help the young. Mass deportation boosts wages for blue collars and entry-level jobs, cutting red tape. Small business taxes boosts hiring and entrepreneurship, but so far big changes are blocked by Congress, who sits on its hands or schmoozes with lobbyists instead of throwing young people a lifeline. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at ProfStKnowledge.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.